Hello, and welcome to the Eternal Spirit Show. With me, Paul Salmon. I'm a psychic medium, and my guest today is the Right Reverend Charles Mugleston. Good morning, Charles. You said I could call you.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, everyone.
Bit of a mouthful, isn't it? The Right Reverend, but you are. You are, in fact, a bishop with the Liberal Catholic Church.
Indeed.
What I'd like to know is, how did your spiritual pathway begin? Was it many years ago? Well, it must be, I imagine.
Paul, it was many lifetimes ago.
I'm trying to be politically correct, you see.
Oh, don't be. Please don't be at all. No, well, in this current life, I think my grandmother instilled a great love of the church for me. And so I went to the local Anglican church in Whitnasham, St Mary's, where I was brought up. And I sang in the choir. And I loved the ritual. It was a way of God expressing his divine life in the mundane life. I loved the celebration of the Eucharist, and I particularly loved what was called the sevenfold Amen. Would you like me to sing it for you now?
Oh, I'll be delighted if you would.
It goes, Amen, 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 Amen. And every time we sang that with Charlie Cowell, the organist who led the choir at the church, that took me somewhere else. To places I couldn't go when I was listening to the sermon or listening to some of the other parts of the Psalms maybe, but that always took me elsewhere, and I used to love singing that, and that seemed to open my heart and my mind, my will, to not just the in-the-box Christianity, but to all other religions. Well, that's the wonder of song and music anyway, isn't it?
So the seven amens, we're talking about different vibrations, if you like, raising yourself to the higher sphere.
From, yes, in using the traditional Hindu spiritual discipline of the understanding of the seven chakras, yes, from the basal chakra right to the highest one, which of course is purple, violet.
Well, for some watching this, seeing you as a bishop or right reverend,
yes,
I think, well, you're really open-minded because you're talking about chakras, and
yes.
Maybe there are some people in your association, shall we say, who aren't as open as you are.
In any group, whether it's politics or the church or wherever, you're always going to get different levels of understanding and therefore divisions. People love their labels, that they love to know where they're at, they love their identities, but spirituality is about discovering the divine identity within, the divine I am. And God, who is the infinite one, is the centre of everything and us as well, and all we have to do is turn the searchlight of our consciousness inwards and discover the infinite one within, and then all shall be well, as Mother Julian of Norwich says.
Well said. I couldn't have said it better myself, Charles.
Thank you.
So you grew up in a Christian household.
It was nominally Christian. It was a lovely, loving household, thank you. As I say, my grandmother encouraged me to go to church. My grandfather, who was a blacksmith, he was also a Baptist lay preacher at Swilland.
Oh, yeah.
Great man, great soul. So it was in the family. My mother and my father weren't particularly active in church going, but I took it on board and I grew up with it, and I saw its limitations, and I also am deeply appreciative of what it did for me in the opening up of, well, the whole world of spirituality. And I had to break out of the Anglican Church as such, because that is where mysticism takes you. Mysticism is the heart of all religions. And as William Blake, the great poet, said, mystics all come from the same country. They all speak the same language. So you get from the fundamentalist traditions, where people know where we are, we're here, but actually the finite moves on into the infinite. You then go from the fundamentalists to the theologians, where they're always fighting each other about this, that, and the others. This is right, that's right. No. But then we move on into the mystical area, where it gets very, very quiet, very silent, and the voice of the silence within your heart, God, speaks to you and everyone. And that's where we all have to aim for. And when we begin to get there, well, where are you in the infinite? There are no limits to it.
Because I can resonate with you, because I come from a different background.
Yes.
My viewers will know that I'm a spiritualist and what have you. But we sort of sing from the same book. Is that a phrase? Is there such a phrase as sing from the same book? Sounds good anyway. But so you took on board the spirituality more than some young men may have done who joined the choir. And
the spirit of the thing, not the letter of the thing. That's right. That's
right.
Absolutely.
So
right.
what did your parents think about you following through your spirituality at a young age?
They were very cautious in their responses, but they're very kind parents, and they let me go my own way, and I'm very glad I have. And I was so pleased to be able to take my father's funeral service. And then, strangely enough, that was the first one I did. And the second one I did was Mother wanted to say farewell, so I took her service. That was the second one I took.
Because you are what we call a celebrant.
I'm a funeral celebrant. I rise above limitations of labels, and so I'm available to take services for anybody of any faith at any time. I'm only too willing to do that.
Is that the meaning of the word celebrant, where you're open to different religious backgrounds and denominations?
We celebrate everything. The one God, the one infinite God in everything. Yes, yes.
So, how far are you on this spiritual pathway? I mean, have you found God, for instance? Or well, if you have, could you put in a good word for me?
Because God is the infinite one, you find God everywhere and in everything. That's hard for people to understand. That's the journey we have to take. We have to put our own limited thoughts, words and deeds aside. We have to be humble, we have to be quiet, and we have to grow with God. That's what spirituality is about, growing with God, allowing God to come through in every way, shape and form. And sometimes in the tragedies that people can't understand in their lives, we have to, with great trust, with great confidence in God, we have to move on and do a great deal of accepting, because there's great wisdom in acceptance. Why me? Why this? Why that? We're forever saying that, but there is a good, wise reason for God's love working itself out through that particular situation. And if we can only look for it, we will discover it, whether in hindsight, whether we get to the end of our lives and look back and say, now I see. Then the love of God will really shine through us and help us to help other people, because that's what we're here for.
But you see, I've been asked many times, if there is a God,
yes.
Why does he let bad things happen?
Well, a bad thing is a bad thing to a person whose limited awareness, limited consciousness ends here. That means we're rather in the selfish mode. We don't understand, we don't see the bigger picture. But when our consciousness expands, then we begin to see the bigger picture, and we accept these things, like all the horrors of the Second World War, like the horrors of maybe next door arguing with one another and so on and so forth, the tragedy of a child dying early. A lot of people can't accept that, especially the parents. But when we expand our consciousness to soul level, when our soul level is made spiritually aware, we begin to understand, appreciate and accept with a very calm and wise acceptance why things are happening the way they are. If you go into the area of psychology, Carl Jung, he's very good on this, helping people to accept what's known as the shadow side of themselves, the limited, the selfish side, and to help work through that and leave it hopefully behind, redeem it.
I've had a silent pause, Charles. It's beautiful, the way you're very eloquent, the way you say things, and it's...
When you try to offer yourself to God and service to others, you suddenly find yourself like yourself as a medium, as a sensitive, saying things you didn't realise you were going to say. And it's spontaneous spirituality. It just flows, doesn't it?
It's like spiritual working through us.
That's right.
Out to help others.
Yes, because that in the end is what we are. We are spirit. We are spirit, soul and body. Body is an expression of soul, and soul is an expression of spirit, and that is God's spirit.
And do you think that is finding God?
That is finding God.
Right.
That is speaking God. That is being God.
Yes.
It may sound blasphemous as we're human beings, but the word human means God-man. There we are.
Wonderful.
Yes, it is wonderful. It's infinitely beautiful.
I'm going to change tack now, Charles.
Right.
Because...
Off you go.
Follow that. How can you follow that? There's another side to you. Acting.
Yes.
Now, I have seen you. You performed to the Ipswich Operatic Society in Oliver, not so long ago at the Regent Theatre.
In April, yes.
And I saw you playing Fagin.
That's right.
And may I say, you were tremendous.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had to say that live on air. But when did the acting begin for you?
Well, again, when I was very young at school, at Whitnesham Primary School, I just did not like sport, but my sport was on stage. And I couldn't wait for the annual plays to happen. Whatever it was put on for the parents, which they really relished, especially when something went wrong. Then going to Claydon Secondary Modern School, I was introduced to Gilbert and Sullivan musicals. We did the Mikado and various other plays. I played William Corder in the Red Barn Murder, which was great fun. Then I moved on to the Ipswich Operatic Society in the 1970s and experienced the wonderful Regent stage, so wide and such an auditorium, beautiful. And I was privileged to grow through the ranks from the chorus to semi-principal to principal. And in 1980 I did Fagin again. And I then left to move into the Ipswich Gilbert and Sullivan Society, and I again chorus, semi-principal, principal, and I then moved on into the professional theatre for 7 years, giving recreations of the dramatic public readings at Charles Dickens. And I would like to say a little, if I may, if we've got time, about the story of Oliver behind the musical Oliver, because it's very, very important. It's a deeply spiritual story, although it appears very simple. It is in fact the story of the hero's soul. And because we are in an Olympic year, I thought you might like to hear this about Hercules and the path that he had to take through life, and which is our life. It all works out in different ways, but here's a very eloquent piece, a very deep piece, leading to deep peace, the soul accomplishing all the 12 labours of Hercules, because funnily enough, in Oliver, the musical, there are 12 scenes, you see.
Are there?
It's archetypal.
Right.
It's the full circle.
Yeah.
And the good outcome for Oliver is a timeless thing for the good outcome of us all, union with God. And this is what it's all about. Hercules, or Heracles, is the most celebrated of all the heroes of ancient Greece. And although his famous 12 labours are more or less familiar to the majority of students, yet probably few have undertaken the work involved in their full interpretation. It is evident from their nature that they symbolise in some manner the tasks which the soul must accomplish in order to gain liberation from the entanglements of the mundane realms of form and sense. Hercules passed through many other ordeals, both before and after the 12 labours. These other experiences may be regarded as relating to the circumstances of the soul's descent into matter and its ultimate progress through the supermundane realms to the glory of final freedom and conscious immortality. Now here's where it gets involved. Heracles, according to his name, signifies Hera's greatness and glory, since Hera, Greek, in her highest aspect, is the divine font of souls. Hercules, as her glory, is the symbol of the ultimately triumphant soul, while the ordeals through which he emerges successfully are types of the experiences which all souls, consciously or unconsciously, undergo in their struggles for perfection. Now, Heracles was said to be the son of Zeus, signifying the divine parentage of the soul and the gift of self-active reason, which forever distinguishes the human from all lower forms of nature. Alcmena, the human mother of Hercules, denotes power and bodily strength, of which her son is the active personification. Like all human souls, he is the child of heaven and earth, and inasmuch as his greatness was manifested in his mundane achievements, he is appropriately called Earth's best blossom in the Orphic hymn. Now, I could go on a long way into this book, which is a really, really marvellous book, Sacred Mythoi of Demigods and Heroes. It speaks about Prometheus, Perseus, and Hercules, and it's published by the Shrine of Wisdom at Fintry Brook near Godalming, Surrey. And I thoroughly recommend that you look it up, Google it, and get a copy, and it will do you a power of good.
Let me just hold the book up to the camera a second. Oh, there you are, if you can capture that somewhere.
Thank you.
No, that's my pleasure. I believe you have something else you would like to read out.
Yes. For those who are not maybe appreciative of the Grecian interpretation of spirituality and mentioning all the gods, well, here is a wonderful piece from a book called The Journey Inwards. If you have experienced an inner realization of your real self as the Christ within you, and your phenomenal self as only the instrument used by this greater self, Christ, you will become very humble. You will no longer have any attachment to, still less claim any reward for, your deeds, however good, for you will know that they do not belong to you at all. What it's saying is that actually God does everything. Everything good, everything true, everything beautiful, and he resolves it all into the most wonderful unity.
Have you touched upon the Christ light? To me you have anyway, but can you feel it? But then that's. I'm not asking you to show any ego, but have you felt the Christ with you as such?
Well, being consecrated a bishop, having moved on from being ordained as a priest, the Christ light can but grow and grow. And sometimes you don't know you are there with it. It manifests itself sometimes very powerfully to people in various ways, and things you may do, say, whatever, the way you look. Oh, is there a light shining from your face? Oh, yes. Well, I didn't know. You don't know you're there sometimes.
But have you found Christ in, or even a hint of, that sounds dreadful, a hint of Christ in other people? Have you ever come across anyone else who may have that shining forth?
Well, as I say, God is there within everyone, and it is for us to allow God to come forth.
So it's like you say, it is about lifting that veil, isn't it?
Lifting the veil, absolutely.
And opening the heart.
Yes. And don't let the mind get in the way. Use use the mind, but don't let the mind conquer. The crown that people wear, both in spiritual circles and in royal circles and so on, that signifies union with God in an integral manner, and we have to approach God in an integral manner. The triangle is the mind, the heart and the will. The mind through meditation, the heart through prayer, and contemplation is through the will, the persistence, and that will reward you richly.
Did this help you in acting, playing the part of Fagin?
Absolutely, yes. You have to know human nature through and through.
Yeah.
And Ron Moody, in his wonderful autobiography, he actually said that he found, through the success of his portraying Fagin, he found the good side, and that was, if you may not believe me, but he actually said he found it was the god Pan, the god of nature that he was personifying for people, and which touched people's hearts deeply. He'll never be forgotten. He never got an Oscar, but he did in our hearts.
So I think when people go to the theatre, like I did to watch Oliver,
Yes.
we see it at face value, don't we? Not all of us, but there are workings in among actors, and like you said, the 12 scenic parts of Oliver itself.
That's right.
Denoting, what was it? Denoting wholeness, or the 12 followers of Christ.
Well, the theatre itself is really just another form of a church, because it is truth, goodness and beauty coming forth. You have the triangle of author, abiding, actor, proceeding, and audience returning. That is the triangle of mind, heart and will, of goodness, truth and beauty, of being, life, in intellect. All these triads are but the nature of the one working himself out for the good of the people involved at that time.
Do you believe in reincarnation, Charles?
Well, I mentioned that
because you did at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, we have cycles in nature, and everybody must believe in spring, summer, autumn, winter. And there's so many cycles. Not to believe in reincarnation is almost foolishness, I think. If we are to reunite with the Infinite One, then we have to come into a situation of finitude, of limitation, to realise that really we are unlimited beings, we are godly beings, and that's where we need to be at. And
because I'm striving, I don't want to come back, but I think I will be coming back a few times yet until I learn my lesson.
Humility again.
You may not come back. I don't think you'll be coming back again.
Humility bringeth forth the greatest humanity. It can happen just like that. If God grants you the grace of enlightenment, that there is maybe no need for you to come back. But if God wants you to do certain work in the world, then you will be humble before God and you will come back quite gladly, quite freely, and do that joyfully.
Before we go, a couple of things to ask you. Let's talk about this, what you wanted to mention.
Yes, please. Yes, absolutely. The Ipswich Operatic and Dramatic Society have been so kind to me. I've got to give them something back. I really have. And I'd like to advertise their next spectacular show, Celebration 2012, at the Spa Pavilion, Felixstowe. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
Let me hold it up again.
Please.
Okay, quick. Where are we? There we are. Give that a quick plug.
Thank you very much, Felixstowe Television, for this and for this.
So,
I'm deeply grateful.
Are there any more acting roles besides Fagin coming up?
Oh dear, I don't know.
I'll tell you what I want to mention before we go. Your one-man show.
The Rubaiyat of
Yes.
Omar Khayyam.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, back in 2009, you kindly
I
came
did come
to see
along.
that as well. Yes, I was at the New Wolsey Theatre in Ipswich, and I recreated the poem, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, which Edward Fitzgerald, the Suffolk poet, translated from the Persian into English. And when he did that, it took great popular appeal all over the world, again because it's so deeply spiritual and touched everybody's hearts. I do that as a spiritual service to anybody who would like it. It's a fully staged dramatic reading, Victorian chair, Persian carpet, high column, which the Persians used to have, and wine, of course, which is the central symbol of the poem. And yes, I read it. It's very funny.
That's not just reading, Charles. You do put your whole persona and acting, and you draw down something. I can see it.
Well,
some can't, some can, some can't.
E.M. Forster said, "Only connect," and that's got acting and everything in a nutshell. That's what I try to do, and yes.
Well, if you wish to invite Brother Charles for reading or take a service or two, or just to get in touch, contact me here at felixtotv.co.uk. But Charles, where do you see yourself in a couple of years' time?
Wherever God wants me to be.
What can I say? I'll have some of that, Charles, I think. So, the Right Reverend Charles Mugleston, thanks for being my guest today. It's been enlightening. So,
that's what it was meant to be. Yes.
So thank you very much. Thanks everyone for watching. Goodbye and God bless.